Hey guys, it's Matt here, and today I'm doing another episode of Matt Rants. So, I do not know if this is the last Matt Rants in 2018, if not one of the last ones, or if this is the first Matt Rants in 2019. The one thing that I can confirm is that this year sucks. I don't know which one it is yet. I don't know if I'm calling it 2019 rather early, or if I'm just wrapping up 2018 with a whimper. Either way, what matters is the topic of this episode. Now, usually, if you're new to Matt Rants, usually we ask a question, and this one I'm going to forego the question, just kind of give the facts and then give my opinion on them. So basically, Nintendo is suing a Nintendo Switch modder, and this person also, not just is a Switch modder, but is also an NES Classic modder. But they didn't just, by the way, I want to get this person's name correct, which is very hard to do because of their last name. Mikkel Eskeldunak. Eskeldunak. So, Mikkel Eskeldunak, I'm just going to refer to this person as this person throughout the rest of this Matt Rants. So what they ended up doing is they sold the Nintendo Switch. They didn't put any games on that. They just sold it modded. I still think that there are some issues with that, but they still sold it modded. And then what they did with the NES Classic Edition, they sold it modded, but with preloaded games. They did both of this through eBay, and of course Nintendo said, hey, don't do that. And Nintendo actually is suing this person who is from California. Also would like to note that the link to this article will be posted in the description box below if you're watching this through our YouTube channel. Now, obviously, this isn't the first time that Nintendo has been suing people recently. Of course, we had that couple that I talked about a while ago that ran Love ROMs, and while they weren't selling those ROMs, they did have advertisements on those on their website, and they did have different pictures of different Nintendo characters on the site. So, of course, that was trademark infringement. And even though yes, Nintendo had sued them for $14 million. Not that it was settled for $14 million, but it was obviously a lot of money right off the get-go. Even though they probably settled for something much less, still they were making what I would imagine to be a lot of money through ad revenue. Yes, people have ad blocker and things like that, but still having ads on every single link. And some of you guys, if you've been on ROM sites before, you can see that there are different pages per every single freaking link of something. In that case, yeah, I can see why Nintendo would be upset about them getting a lot of ad revenue and them being a couple based in the US and their company even based in the US. It was just very easy for Nintendo to go, hey, don't do that. So I talked about that a while ago. In this case, however, this is a person who is selling them through eBay. And again, let's remember two things. One, the Nintendo Switch, it's not even at the halfway mark in its life cycle. Just started under 2 years ago. Yes, there have been other Nintendo Switch modders out there, and people have been posting, their ways to hack their Nintendo Switches and things like that. You won't have that on this channel until Nintendo announces that it's moved on to its next, whatever its next console is in the next 8 years, most likely 8 years. And when they do that, and the Nintendo Switch is considered dead and buried, that is when I will do a video on that. And the reason why is because the way I look at this is, if a console is still being supported by the company that is putting it out, personally, I just feel like it's best to support that console. Now, I'm not saying that people can't hack their Switches for personal use. If they want to have one hacked Switch and one normal Switch for whatever reason, I'm not going to try to get in your life and say what you can and can't do, but at the same time, this is a person who, they didn't just do it for their own personal use, they were clearly selling them modded online, and that's where you end up crossing a line, especially when, again, like I mentioned earlier, obviously the Switch is still alive and well. Yes, Nintendo does have that hardware exploit, I do get that, probably why they would have a new Nintendo Switch come out sooner rather than later, talked about that idea of a new Nintendo Switch in a few different Matt Rants, but still at the end of the day though, the Nintendo Switch is around. It's not a PlayStation 1. You hack your PlayStation 1 or you find exploits through that, so be it. It's a PlayStation 1 at this point. Who cares? That's not money that would be going to Sony anyway. Even with their PlayStation Classic, it's not like they had that many good PlayStation 1 games from the PlayStation 1 on the PlayStation Classic. Oh, knee slapper. No one has ever said that ever. I mean, we've said it before even. But still, point though is that Nintendo Switch, alive and well. Now, looking at the NES Classic Edition, I feel like I don't need to explain to you guys why that's a problem. He didn't just sell it modded. He sold the NES Classic Edition with Nintendo, specifically NES games on it. He sold it with NES games on it. You don't do that. You don't do that. You don't do modding services. You want to do a modding service? Do it again for a 15-year-old console that screen is, blown out or something like that. Or like looking at the Sega Dreamcast, if you put I think it was like the GDEMU or something like that, you put that on there, Sega's not going to come after you. It's when you do something like that, I will admit though, you do something like that, and then you put a bunch of Sega ROMs on it, Sega Dreamcast ROMs. I'd understand why Sega, if they're releasing newer versions of their games, on different platforms and things like that, even through Steam, they might be like, ooh, we don't like this. And then at that point, yes, they might take action. But if you're, you're just someone just sitting at home, downloading your ROMs, downloading your emulators, although remember, emulators aren't technically illegal, downloading your emulators and your ROMs, I'm not trying to come after you, and I don't think this should set a precedent to come after you, and I don't think that these kind of lawsuits would set that kind of precedent, because I know some people out there online are like, ooh, what if this sets a bad precedent? But this isn't Nintendo coming into your home and saying, you can't do this, and we're going to come after you if you get these. It's about selling them and redistributing them, which is something that Nintendo and other companies have gone after different companies and people for years. This is in no way Nintendo's first rodeo. They did stuff like this for the DSi, I believe, and the 3DS and the DS. I mean, heck, they've consistently released patches for 3DS to make sure that you can't put in cartridges that allow you to play, multiple 3DS games on them. Same thing with flash cards. That's the word I was looking for. Same thing with the DSi as well. Even if they couldn't release patches, same thing with the DS. There still were ways that Nintendo would go after these companies that were selling these. Because, don't do that. Now, again, looking now at the DS and obviously at the 3DS, but specifically the DS, is it a problem if you end up, buying a flash cart for the DS? I mean, at this point, So if someone's selling a flash cart, is that the worst case scenario? I don't think so. At this point, of course, because the DS isn't supported. 3DS, yes, not DS. However, when you start packing in Pokemon games onto it, Phoenix Wright, The World Ends With You, and all these other different kinds of DS games, and I could just keep on naming DS games for a while, but still, you start putting them on, yes, that's when it starts to become illegal. So, definitely a legal issue. So in this case, looking at this, by the way, I want to mention how much Nintendo is suing them for. Nintendo is saying it's entitled to $150,000 for each copyright infringed. So in other words, what they're saying is for every game that Mikkel included, each and every one is worth $150,000. Now, obviously, you can disagree with that number. That's just a high estimate that, of course, will be worked out when things are settled in or out of court. But at the same time, even if you disagree with that number, still, at the end of the day, you just can't do this. There's a huge difference between consuming Earthbound, the third Earthbound, well, Mother 3, or consuming Marvelous on the Super Nintendo with English translations, either for yourself or do a review or something like that. So different to do that than to to make homebrew cartridges en masse. Because of course, some people will talk about, oh, what if it's, the name I have for someone is Joe Repro, right? What if it's local Joe Repro producing, 5 copies of Mother 3? Much different than if someone was actually reproducing Mother multi-carts, let's say, so 1, 2, and 3 on one cartridge of some type, and repros, and then making repro boxes and repro manuals and putting the Nintendo logo on it. And even if they say no, this isn't with the Nintendo, still, when you go that far, I can understand, and start selling them, of course, I can understand why Nintendo will go after you. Nintendo isn't going to look at your YouTube video or something like that and see that you have a repro in the back and be like, well, book them. This isn't what that is. Nintendo is just trying to go after people who are selling either services or specifically modded systems that, are brand new. Because again, Nintendo isn't going to go after you for modding the, an N64, removing the tab so that it could play region games from either region on it, either US games or Japanese games. They're not going to do that. They're not going after people who are doing Ultra HDMI mods, right? The N64, as far as they're concerned, is dead, and maybe they won't be making an N64 Classic anytime soon either. Tears. there was a Matt Rants that we did on that. Potentially Reggie may have crushed all of our hopes and dreams, but whatever, Reggie. The point though is that in this case, yeah, is that oh geez, Uskadonic. I keep on messing up that name. He was selling not just the systems, but also different hacks and homebrew services, specifically for $40, which I didn't think it would be that easy, but I guess it is a $40 job. Either way, and he was, by the way, he had these all on offer up. So we don't know how many he actually sold. I don't believe we are actually privy to that information. We just know that Nintendo is suing him. And again, as I think they should be able to. I really do. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. It does say that in the complaint, it alleges that he modified over 100 Switch consoles. And he was... So this keeps on getting worse and worse, by the way. I keep on... Because I feel like my brain is like, he wasn't this dumb, but then it just more and more info just keeps on coming back to me as I'm... Oh, God. So he wasn't just selling modified Switch consoles, as well as the services to hack Switches. He was selling SD cards containing pirated Switch games. This is what the Nintendo lawsuit alleges. So this is what Nintendo's alleging. SD cards, and there, again, I find this funny only because, again, it's at worst, it's something someone does for a friend. They're like, hey, just don't talk about it. That at worst. But he actually put it on the internet, and he's from California, and he was like, no one's gonna come after me for this. Well, and then he also ended up, like I said earlier, offered modified NES Classics, and they came specifically with 800 different games. 800 different games. So he loaded that thing up to the max and just copy and pasted that kernel all around. And again, look, when it comes to the NES Classic, I'm not saying that you can't modify yours and load up games that you want to. Of course, I do have to give you the caveat, hey, try to have those similar games, the exact games in your library. Don't download them online. Try to rip them off of your NES cartridges. Or your SNES cartridges if you're doing this with the SNES Classic. And when it comes to the NES and SNES Classics, because Nintendo has pretty much said, hey, we're not really looking at making more of those, I have no problem teaching you guys in a future TG Tutorials episode about hacking the NES and SNES Classic editions. Also because Nintendo never had a service. It would have been nice if they did, but they never had a service on it that said, hey, you can actually buy more NES or SNES games digitally and just kind of add more games onto it through some kind of online service. If they did that, then I wouldn't tell you how to hack those systems, because no. But still, Nintendo never planned on doing that, and again, it seems like they're letting those go the way of the dodo for now, in which case, I think that there's no problem modding that for your own personal use. But again, different story when you're modding that and trying to sell them online, and then adding 800 games. And before we wrap things up, I want to say that Nintendo isn't just suing Iskaldunic. Not just him, I nailed it that time. Not just him, but apparently they are pointing to 1 to 100 John Does. Now, Nintendo obviously can't say, specifically who, out of these 100 people, potentially 100 people. So Kenneth Parker, one of their lawyers, said that we have nothing to announce regarding this litigation. So again, not, maybe they're going after the Team Executor folks, because we did talk about that a while ago. They were I believe it was either Team Executor or another modding service was trying to say, hey, we have the ability to sell these mods, and it's like, no, you don't. But maybe a certain Soulja Boy. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't really want to talk about Soulja Boy, unless he said something really stupid again in regards to video game consoles and stuff like that. I don't want to talk about him again, but I'm just putting it out there he might be one of the 100 people. I'm just saying, I don't know. But anyway, as we're wrapping this up, I just want to say, what do you guys think? Do you think that this modder should be sued? Do you think that he shouldn't be sued? Do you think Nintendo should just let him go? Maybe not let him go? Maybe let him go with a slap on the wrist? Maybe don't really fine him to hell? I don't know. I mean, I think that it's perfectly fine fining him. But again, what do you guys think? If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe. If you don't like the video, you can still like and subscribe either way. That's cool. You can hate watch us. I have no problem with that. fully respect it. All right, guys. So love you all. Take care, and tune in next time for another episode of Matt Rants. All right, guys. So see ya.